Oh no, oh no.
So the chances are you've looked in at least one mirror today. You had a shave, or you combed your hair, or maybe you checked your teeth for spinach.
Magic mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?
But what you didn't know is that the face looking back at you isn't the face that everybody else sees. It's a kind of reversed, distorted, back to front image. So some years ago I was on a flight to New York and I read an article in the FT, and it was an article about a phenomenon called a true mirror. The true mirror was actually invented by a brother and sister team in New York called John and Catherine Moulters. And what they discovered was that if you take two mirrors and you put them together at right angles and you take the seam away, the images bounce off each other. And what you see when you look in a true mirror is exactly what other people see when they look at you.
He's a genius, huh?
That's what they tell me.
Well, he looks like a fruitcake to me.
So the difference is when you look in a regular mirror, you look for reassurance. You look for reassurance that you're beautiful, or you're young, or you're tidy, or your bum doesn't look big in that. But when you look in a true mirror, you don't look at yourself. You look for yourself. You look for revelation, not for reassurance. So I want to start today by asking you an incredibly personal question. Not the one that says, why are there so many syllables in the word monosyllabic? No. Not even the one that says, did you know that Britney Spears was an anagram for Presbyterian? No. Something a wee bit more pivotal. In fact, this is a question that's been looking for you your whole life. It's probably the simplest and the most complicated question you'll ever ask. And yet, how many times in your life has somebody offered you that well-meaning piece of advice that you should just be yourself? How many times have you said it to somebody else? One of your kids comes to you, or one of your team comes to you, and they tell you they're nervous, they're scared, they have to go and do something and their bottle goes. And you say to them, darling, just be yourself. Because when you're yourself, you're fabulous. And the two places in life where you are awesome at being yourself, you're fantastic at being yourself, one of them is when you're a kid. When you're a kid, you're fantastic at being yourself because you don't know how to disguise your differentness. That's why you see kids on the beach, naked up until the age of 5, and then suddenly at the age of 6 or 7, they want a bathing suit, they want a bikini. Who's got a 4-year-old boy? Anybody got a 4-year-old boy? I'll take a 3-year-old. Jose, you've got a 3-year-old boy. So I want you to imagine that I go into Eduardo's class in school, and it's a class of 3-year-old boys, and I say to the boys, who's the strongest boy in the class? What's going to happen? Every hand, right? Every single hand in the class will go up. They'll be competitively strong. If I go into the same class, but it's full of 7-year-old boys, and ask the same question, they'll say him, because they know by the time they're 7. He's the strong one. He's the fastest runner. He's the funny guy. He's the bully. Society archetype emerges round about the age of 5, 6, 7, 8. That's why the Jesuits say, give me a boy until the age of 7 and I'll show you the man. Because that's the birth of consciousness. And from then on, you become more self-conscious and by default less good at being yourself. The other place you're fantastic at being yourself is when you're a wrinkly. Because you can't be arsed. You get to that stage in your life where you realize there are more summers behind you than there are in front of you, and everything intensifies. You become more honest. You become less compromising. So you're going to tell people, I don't want the spinach, I'm not going to eat it, I don't like it. And I don't like jazz, so you can shut that noise off. And while I'm at it, I don't like you. And we call these people eccentric. We call our oldies eccentric. In fact, what they're doing is being authentic. So it's kind of like an hourglass effect. When you're young, you're great at being yourself. When you're old, you're great at being yourself. But the bit in the middle is sometimes the most problematic. That's the bit where you have to socialize. You have to accommodate. You have to adapt.
Ew. Well, it's almost time for school. Do you think we look old enough?
How old do we want to look?
Old enough to keep me out of that phone booth during lunch.
At least you got to eat. I had to give my lunch to a girl with a tattoo. We could use a little more mascara.
Yeah.
Assume the position.
Well, I want to introduce you to a woman called Jill Scott. You might have her on your iTunes playlist. But Jill's a singer, and she's just about to go on stage and perform. And in case you missed the question, there's a French filmmaker who's filming her. She's going on stage after Erykah Badu, and he says to her, "Are you nervous, going on after Erykah?" And I want you to listen to what she says.
That chick right there has definitely led the way for me and a lot of other sisters. I appreciate it.
Are you nervous? You're going to perform after her? Just trying to get your feelings.
Have you ever seen me perform? I am the Lady Jill Scott. I am a poet and a singer and a lot of other things. We all have our own thing. That's the magic. That everybody comes with their own sense of strength and their own queendom. Mine could never compare to hers, and hers could never compare to mine.
See, you didn't even know you had a queendom. That's what it looks like. When you figure out how to be yourself, it's an incredibly liberating, untragic way to go through life. So you don't develop an identity that's predicated on being a patchwork personality. You're not a composite, an amalgam of all your experience and influences. You're not just somebody's boss or somebody's mum or anybody's anything. You're yourself.
So on the second day of grad school, I was sitting in a classroom surrounded by freshman students. And I was kind of nervous at the time because at the time I was 31 and they were 18. And my art skills were crappy. I had no background in art and I couldn't draw to save my life.
What the? How the? A perfect circle? Do it again. Show your process.
Well, first I draw this head, then I erased some of the more detailed features. And 1, 2, 3, a circle!
But thankfully, for the first assignment, the instructor started off by showing us a simple demo of how to properly fold a piece of paper. And I was like, I totally got this. But then after the demo, she turned to us and said, okay, now go fold something. And I was like, go fold what? And she said, whatever you want. And I froze. You see, for almost a decade before coming to graduate school, I had clients giving me problems to solve. But I've never quite gotten a problem like, fold whatever you want. So what was I supposed to do? I went back to my desk and started to brainstorm. I'd sketched as many different designs as I possibly could, hoping I could get to something that was good. But I couldn't. 6 hours passed by, and I just sat there with all my energy drained, unable to figure out what I should fold. But then I noticed something. I saw a girl sitting at the faraway corner of the studio. And even from afar, I could see a huge pile of folded objects on top of her desk. And I was like, wow, she really knows what she's doing. So I stood up, and I started to walk towards her. And when I got there, I was very surprised because nothing caught my eyes. There were a lot of objects on top of her desk, but none of them seemed very impressive. And I was like, this is it? So I tapped her on her shoulder and said, what are you making? And she said, I don't know. And I'm like, well, what are all these objects? What are they? And she said, I don't know, I'm just trying stuff out. I couldn't believe her. If she did not know, how could her hands be moving? If she did not know, how could she decide where to fold and in what direction? If she did not know, how could she predict what effect her fold could have on all the subsequent folds? So at that point, it dawned on me, this was youth. It's what was meant by having a beginner's mindset. It was humility. Never mind my lack of drawing skills, humility is what I really lacked. You see, all this time I thought making was something you do to produce a product, a means to an end. But no, making was going through a process with enough humility to admit that you do not know, yet having enough confidence to not let anyone convince you that you're crazy. It didn't matter whether she thought she knew or not, she was making. Just because she didn't know where she was headed, it did not mean she was lost. Just because she couldn't articulate her goals, it did not mean she lacked purpose.